would start. Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. So depending, of course, on the time zone you are in this webinar, we are, of course, crossing time zones. On behalf of iNOVA Media Lab, welcome to this 5x5 webinar, Hacking Social Innovation, organized to mark the first 5 years of iNOVA Media Lab at Nova University of Lisbon in Portugal. Thank you very much to you all, both our extraordinary panelists, who I will, of course, present just in a moment, and of course, to all of you, also extraordinary participants. Thank you very much for committing your time, energy, and attention in, as we know, a quite challenging period of our lives and our society. So this webinar is actually a way, in a humble way, I would say, to kind of a form of resistance, of course, that resistance that not of giving up, of keep establishing new networks, of continuing to develop our global citizenship. And of course, we are aware of the inequalities, and they are still many and deep, that mark our own time. And perhaps more important is that this webinar is a very small step indeed, but a step to not to give up on finding solutions in a participatory way. So as you all know, and of course you all have previous contact with our presentation with this webinar, I would say that with particular strength in the last decades, all across the globe, innovation laboratories have been founded as a form of creative response to contemporary societal challenges. And these labs, sometimes these maker spaces, these hacker spaces, though they embrace different models and different objectives, they implement different proposals and adapt in specific ways to the different contexts in which they operate. Our panel for today tries to make an effort to represent that diversity. Of course, there are much more profiles in other labs, but nevertheless, I think we may have in common a vision of a renewed role for universities, and particularly of what I think have been called, or what we can call, hybridity. So in this sometimes very fluid and complex way of embracing research, arts, creation, production, etc. And to celebrate the first 5 years of iNOVA Media Lab, we have brought together 5, or I would say 4, I will discount myself on this talk, of course, as a mediator, but 4 extraordinary representatives from 4 innovation laboratories. And our goal is to encourage direct sharing between the speakers and the participants about these challenges and solutions found, and of course opening and nurture an ongoing discussion. So without further ado, I would like to very briefly present our panelists. We are indeed very honored to have with us Lili Diaz-Comaran from Aalto Media Lab in Finland, Massimo Bianchini from Polyfactory from Politecnico di Milano in Italy, Luisa Santos from Games and Digital Lab, Fundação Getúlio Vargas in Brazil, and Eric Gordon from MIT and Engagement Lab from the US. I'm Paulo Vicente, the coordinator of iNOVA Media Lab here at Nova University of Lisbon. I'll be having the honor role of mediating this great panel. Each speaker will have approximately 15 minutes in the first round to present their lab and leading activities. We are quite aware that 15 minutes is a really short time. Of course, the goal is to trigger afterwards an informal and dynamic and warm discussion. And during the session, of course, all participants will have the opportunity to interact with the speakers and the audience. So with no further ado, Lili Diaz-Comaran, once more, thank you so much for having embraced this event, and thank you once more, and the floor is naturally yours. Sorry.
Oh, forget that we're muted.
No.
Yes. So I'm going to share the screen. I would also like to thank iNOVA for iNOVA Media Lab for this opportunity to present to you today and to share some time with you all. And
Yeah, that's perfect. Yes.
yes, great. And here we go. So yes, and the topic is okay. This I was very engaged with the whole notion of this thinking about social innovation, and what does it mean, especially when you're involved with working with technology for for a long time, as I have. And like working in developing things that are related to technology, but nevertheless the idea is that I come from an institution where I have been for the past 25 years. Used to be the University of Art and Design Helsinki, and in 2010 there was a merger of three already existing universities. That's the University of Art and Design Helsinki, where I was located, which is a art and design university, well, school before it became a university, which already existed from the late 19th century, the Helsinki Institute of Technology, and Helsinki University of Technology, and then the Helsinki School of Business. So these three institutions got together and created what is called now Aalto University. So we went from being my university, we were about 2,500 people, including staff and students, and then now we're a community of over 20,000, 27,000, I believe. So it was like a very radical change. Then we were then recreated into the School of Arts, Design and Architecture. And within the School of Art and Architecture, then we had the Department of Media that came to be, that brought together photography, visual communication design, and the Media Lab Helsinki, and that's where I have been. And then at the Department of Media, I'm currently the head of research. I am a full professor of new media. New media can be many things, so that is something, so I guess for me to think about, all the time. And I am engaged in research in art and design for the new media, and I also work with the doctoral students quite closely. And then most recently, I began minor subject studies that targets the building virtual worlds, that is using virtual reality to do all kinds of like different things. So then also I lead a research team, Systems of Representation, and it was established since 1998, so it's been a little while, and we do lots of different things, but in a nutshell, the most significant activities that we do, because of course there's always like an overlap, or should be. We focus on the notion of digital cultural heritage, development of technology interfaces that targets this particular sector that includes like, galleries, libraries, museums, and archives. In this sector and within this topic, we particularly have worked in developing 3D interfaces and virtual reality applications. And then from a theoretical perspective, our work is very much oriented towards the use of activity theory in art and design. And yes, and I noticed that many times I'm translating back and forth between English and Spanish, and I see that I have a little typo there, anthropology instead of anthropology. Yes. Because my background, I have originally degree, a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology, Cultural Anthropology. And then from there, I went to a Master of Arts in computer arts, so-called computer arts in those days. And then proceeded to design. I say that, you know, my practice is very much also oriented by this like anthropological perspective. So in my presentation today will happen through that perspective. And then of course, the view that I give of, you know, Media Lab at the Department of Media, it will be my view. And there are many other things happening aside from what I will present. But because, you know, we only have 15 minutes, I figure I would just focus, you know, on, you know, what I'm doing at the moment, actually. So we work very much in this idea of like researching reality through art and design. And there's the question of how can or does art and design inform our perspectives about reality. And of course, I would say that in at least, you know, in the Western world, definitely we are like very much a society that is like very full, you know, of technology everywhere all the time, and that it is like, you know, saturated. I would say people, you know, audiences are like saturated with technology. And in this context, art can be a very important lens through which culture is viewed. Artists and designers have always been known for innovation. So if you want to promote, I'd say, innovation in digital technology, then, you know, you need to have artists and designers. And then how can those technology change our conception and sensitivity about design? I think that for sure it definitely does. At least, you know, for me, it has been, you know, through my journey of working from the beginning when these all these things started coming out. I've been involved in this field since 1985. So, you know, it's almost like I've lived the history of, you know, what, you know, how it is at the moment. And then to the most important question that definitely has guided my search and research is how can art, design, and new media technology enable us to construct new historiographies that also highlight the central dimensions of human culture, meaning that always my vision has been that, you know, that history is not just simply what is written down, but that it's like all the different sensations that we experience through living. And is there a way that we could use like new media and audiovisual? Well, used to be audiovisual, but we say new media now. Why? Because it's digital. In addition to being electronic, it's digital. Can perhaps open that perspective for us, so that maybe we, you know, can access new ways of like writing history. And then at the moment, I'm involved in two EU projects. These Beyond Matters, Cultural Heritage on the Verge of Virtual Reality. That is a large-scale Creative Europe project. And here I'm working, we are working, I have again, a small team of, in this case, doctoral students. And we are working with these different institutions in Europe. And the work there, it involves creation of, one is a reconstruction toolkit that for exhibitions that uses virtual reality and allows for museums to be able to, like, you know, archive the contents of exhibitions. We are very much committed to the idea that virtual reality can provide a good way to archive or the audiovisual parts of exhibition, something that, you know, has not been done before. And we have two case studies that we are working on that are extremely interesting. The first one being a reconstruction of Les Immateriels, which was like possibly the first new, quote unquote, new media exhibition that was staged at Pompidou in Paris, and put together by Jean-François Lyotard. And then the second being Iconoclash exhibition that was put together by Bruno Latour and Peter Weibel. And the outcome of this project will be a toolkit that could be distributed to different European museums. And of course, the whole issue of the COVID, situation has been, but we continue. We have been able to continue. And then the other project that I'm currently involved in is the SPICE project. This is an H2020 funded project, and this is social cohesion, participation, and inclusion through cultural engagement. And it's a quite large project with 13 different partners across Europe that involve universities, museums, as well as SME companies that are also involved in the heritage sector. And in here, what we are working on is like the development of tools for interpretation, semantic interpretation, and it's terribly exciting work, I would say, that where audiences can access exhibitions in galleries, and where they can curate their own contents from the items that they see in the exhibition. They see, hear, interact with in the exhibition. And we have a particular target of servicing communities that are vulnerable, in the sense that we're working with senior citizens and rural communities whose distance prevents them from easily accessing physically the space of the museum. Yeah, so then, and again, I mentioned the COVID because, okay, this project we started in May, and, we have never met personally. So it's, but we still have, continuing and, onwards, Then I labeled my presentation as the era of zettabytes, ? And because, it's like, simply to call attention to this fact that, okay, so we talk about, the new era of Anthropocene, okay, that's, definitely an interesting characterization of our time. By the era of zettabyte, we mean, the moment in which like IP traffic in the internet, exceeded a trillion gigabytes, which happened sometime around 2016. And if you think, it's like a zettabyte is like 1 trillion gigabytes. So you can imagine, and this is some of the statistics, these are from 2019 is the latest, and you can see the comparison on how it has risen. And I wanted to show it in this manner because, okay, you can see this is a site that is called Domo, which is super interesting. These people, it's a platform that they are actually monetizing all these kind of visualizations and processing of data for people that, need or want access to this kind of information. So here you have on the right, this like psychedelic type content, but which is like, okay, very groovy, but then look at the side and then think about like, the kind of, potential monstrosity in terms of energy consumption. I'm not going to get into that, but I just mentioned it. I have some of our students and now they're postdocs doing their own thing, and, very interesting work that, have done, that connection, that nothing that we do on the internet, it's very easy for us to be searching, but it doesn't really come for free. So that is one of the things that I would like to, raise when we think about this notion of social innovation, right? And then the question of okay, so is this like kind of traffic making us better and more intelligent human beings? That was the question that, that I asked myself. And, I think that, maybe possibly all of us do. And then here I'm just showing you work from Francisco Goya, a Spanish painter, And his work, these are like prints. This is from the late 1700s edition of Los Caprichos, and it's like considered to be a very awkward and different and weird kind of work that he did. And I just want to translate one of the things that it says in the bottom, when it says, on the one that you have to your left, qualifying the two individuals that you see in this aquatinta, it says, por mover la lengua de otro modo, because I move my tongue in a different way, basically because I spoke a different language. So this works, and then the one to the right, por haber nacido en otra parte, because I was born somewhere else. So here we're talking about a topic that, okay, if we thought that this is like a new thing, we can see clearly how it's not, and, we can, this is something that is like very, ubiquitous in our history. What he's showing here, actually this both of these individuals are wearing what is called a San Benito, which was a special outfit that they put on you when, the Inquisition was after you. And, this way everybody knew that you were marked, and they could like do whatever, they wanted. Yeah, in the context of, of these two kind of questions. On the one hand, we have the notion of this era of zettabyte, era being in chronology, being a word that is used to indicate a new order of things and which begins with an important event. Okay, so we have the vertiginous incrementing of data flow through social media. And then, on the other hand, we have, Goya's, drawings. I wanted to put those. I didn't want to put the things, of Trump in Trump's, happenings in the media, how we see it, to then highlight to us that, okay, so we have advanced quite a bit in one way, but, there are other ways which are perhaps those that relate social innovation to social, not necessarily only technological innovation, that we should be like thinking about. So what are, some of the things that this would have in common, I think the first is, it's continued minimal responsibility assumed regarding the development of falsehood patterns for the sake of profits. Like we know that this is, something that, is very much related to, prejudice throughout, history. So then we don't really have anything new there, but perhaps, we have the capacity to better reflect through technology, do we? Okay. At least in a bigger scale, Here we have 68, 70 people gathered. Then coming with conflicting political and economic orders regarding the basic need for human privacy. That is something that is, we can think that is of our time, but on the other hand, one could argue, and this is something that Hannah Arendt, very much worked on, how the notion of privacy, is something that, you can like track historically, from antiquity to our current era, and how, is something that shifts according to whether, there's like, slavery or, more control by the state, or now, which is what's, in the equation, a change towards some sort of, order where big corporations have a say in the political matters of, however it is that we are organized as human beings. Nationhood is a relatively new, recent invention. And then, okay, for us, from a technical perspective, the lack of understanding regarding notions of so-called human intelligence combined with a need for critical thinking about the possibilities of artificial intelligence, because that is, also one of the things that is like being touted as like the new frontier. And here I would say that for social innovation to happen, there is a critical need that we develop literacy about what are the techniques of AI, like that we really, and particularly for artists and designers, that they really understand what is going on, so that we don't fall into this situation where there's like science fiction that is being used to justify the development of certain tools, or to go in a particular way, because of course it's going to make money for someone, and it's sold to us, on the one hand, AI is going to take over your job. Okay, that's a possibility. On the other, AI has the capacity to do this and that, when it's not really the case. And I cite here an article that I think it would be good. It's this artificial intelligence and the problem of digital ontotheology towards a critical rethinking of science fiction and theory. And that's also for, when we start using speculative design, so that we're also very conscious about these, the use of these methods. And then that's one. And then the second is to consider the possibility that there could be a craft type orientation towards technology like artificial intelligence. And I'm just here showing some photographs of, it's one of the things that we have done in the Media Lab of doing all here in this case. This workshop, it did not take part in Media Lab, it took part in Taiwan. But here the students were learning, at the bottom, to how to, put together a self-organizing map. So self-organizing map is a artificial neural network, and it's one of the building blocks of the technology, artificial intelligence technology of the future. So that then you understand what really is going on there. So that, and then I will just now simply show of the things to one of our recent graduates, his dissertation, Open and Collaborative Design Processes. This is Massimo Menicinelli's dissertation, and basically I just want to show this in the sense of how recognizing that it is easier said, let's collaborate, than to actually doing it. And his dissertation is a contribution to how it is that you can get all these like different communities together, working together. In this particular case, is maker communities. And then this one was defended in December, Becoming Other, by Daniel Landau. And here is about the use of what is referred to as video VR, not model VR that is generated through CGI, but video VR that is used as an element in conflict negotiation. And in the idea here with this particular installation this was at the Museum of Israel in Jerusalem. You're seeing, the two sides, or, on the one side you have, you can see the difference in the rugs. On one side you have a Palestinian home, and on the other side you have the home of, Israeli Jewish citizens, Palestinian citizens, and Israeli Jewish citizens. And the idea is that they could visit each other's home, using the virtual reality application. And in his objective, one of the things that motivated him in doing this work is basically to carry on with the notion of putting you in somebody else's shoes. And I will finish now with this quote from Marshall McLuhan. You know, when we're thinking about all these like things, there and the whole notion of, you know, this fiction. There are no passengers on spaceship Earth. We are all the crew, so we're in this together. Yeah, and this is something to think about then, that we all have a vested interest in, being reflecting and being involved in these changes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lily, for your great texture and detailed presentation. It was really interesting on the interconnection between arts and design, and particularly I would say the need for critical thinking and critical literacy on digital media. With no further ado, I will immediately pass the word to Massimo Bianchini from Polyfactory, from Politecnico di Milano in Italy. Massimo, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good morning and good afternoon. It depends from the time zone to everyone. I start to share my screen. Okay.
I will ask, I'm not sure if Lily is still sharing the screen. Can you, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Just a moment, because, okay. Can you see my screen? Okay,
Perfect.
thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Oh, just a moment, then I can to start. So first of all, I thank you very much, iNOVA, for inviting me, and it is a pleasure to be here to discuss and to present the activity of my lab, also to see the other presentation. Lily before mentioned Massimo Mecchinelli is a friend of mine, and I know him, and I spent 6 months in the Alto Media Lab in 2012 for my PhD period abroad, because I was studying how, when you start to open the Fab Lab in Alto University. And today I go to introduce the story of my lab, just to explain what we are doing in the field of design, making, and also linking through the project and the activity that we do in the field of social innovation. Making at Polini, it's becoming a sort of claim for the people that work in Polyfactory, because my university has a strong and historical lab and experimental culture that come from the presence of a lot of department of the engineering, architecture, and more recently design. So, and for this reason, this historical tradition and start to stay in contact with the new and latest movement of innovator, and I refer to grassroots innovators, I refer to maker hacker communities, and also frugal innovators. And what I can say is that Polini has a sort of ecosystem of labs, and we have more than 250 labs and 5 what we call grid infrastructures. There is a huge biodiversity of labs that are working in different fields, that I can say. But in recent year, there is a special focus in the implementation of lab that come from different departments, from chemical department, mechanical department, from architecture and design, that from different perspectives are starting to explore the potential of digital technology in many fields: architecture, manufacturing, and implementation of new materials. And so we, within this framework of transformation, within this framework, start to create connection between the lab of Politecnico and the world of industry and the world of construction. There was a space, an empty space, when we start to create our makerspace, our Fab Lab. So Polyfactory has been created in 2015. It's been created by a group of researcher and professor that was entrusted to explore the change, the transformation after the Great Recession of economy, of also design profession, because there was a lot of changes, for example, in Italy, but not only, with the digital revolution and the digital transformation that start to combine the creation and the rise of the maker community. And for this reason, we start to consider Polyfactory as a place, not only a makerspace and Fablab, but a place where you can mix and combine two different cultures. From the one side, you start to see and combine more than a strong academic culture has more than 100 years of history with the fresh energy of the grassroots innovators. And in our vision, it was a sort of political act when we start to put the capability of the embed within the university this kind of energy, this kind of attitude, in order to be more close to the society, more open to the society, directly in touch with the society and with the informal innovator, frugal innovator, technology innovators, and this kind of independent innovator community. But on the other side, start to combine this energy with maintain a strong scientific culture and background in order to try to combine these things. For this reason, as a makerspace and Fablab, we are entrusted to explore what we can call the great transformation. In particular, what is the relationship between design and new production models, in order to understand what is the idea of renewing product services, but also to connect the idea of not only experimenting or dealing with the design of product, but also to understand in a broad perspective what are the impacts in the society, and how the prototyping, the experimenting using design and digital technology, and also involving citizens, involving independent innovators, can be scaled up in order to stay in touch with the policy maker or the policy systems, in order to start to align this kind of complexity. And to create our space, we are not alone. It's not enough to have only a department. So I work in the Department of Design, but it's been a matter of starting to create a synergy inside the Polytechnico in order to join and collaborate with other two departments, the Department of Mechanical Engineering and the Department of Electronic Information and Bioengineering. So we put our design-driven approach in order to collaborate with the other departments and then implementing activities. How we start, this is the space that you can see inside. Is one of the spaces that you can find in a lot of Fablabs that can similar setup. So Eric, that is in MIT, has the university has also the creation of the Fablab, is the center of creation of the Fablab. So I think that he knows very well this kind of setup. But to be for us is the idea of using this setup in order to try to implement a progressive set of activity. We started in 2015. It was not so expert in digital fabrication. Then we start to put immediately to be part of network, because for us it was relevant to scale up and just to collaborate with other reality in order to implement our activities. So now we are part of the Fablabs community, yes, but also with the Fab City community. That it's a global network, it's a global initiative that start to put the discourse of making within and the cities in a global perspective in order to start to align this, and also maintain our scientific approach. We at the same time, we have been the first Fab Lab to be part of the Key Enabling Technology Center. It's a European network of labs that start to support especially the small medium enterprise in the approach to the digital transformation. And these are our fields of activity. We work in competitive research. We are mainly a research Fab Lab. We can define ourselves as a research fab lab. And then we provide consultancy, in particular in the field of design and digital fabrication, to small, medium enterprises, but also we like to cooperate with large-scale company. Then we organize hackathon, workshop, this kind of experimental education activity within a project or as a lone activity in order to stimulate the peer-to-peer learning among young innovator, designer, engineer that work in Polytechnico, but also people that come outside. Then we have a mission within Polytechnico. We work with the young students and the PhD students in order to stimulate and support them in the pre-incubation of idea. We have a program that we call Talent in Resident, and then we offer residencies to young students in order to implement their thesis and then prototype and also collaborate with us. For example, like a union agency in the research project that we are doing at European level. Finally, we are in touch with the city. We want to be part of the city, and then we organize events, cultural events. We participate to initiative implemented by the municipality of Milano and other institution in order to stimulate the discourse and the debate about the role of design in society. And what are, in terms of hybridization? So when we deal with the innovation activities, we start with the discourse of open and distributed design. That is also part of my background. I implemented my PhD research on self-production and distributed and open design. But also we participate to European research that I go to show what are the projects when we are involved in responsible research innovation, user and patient innovation, circular innovation. And then also we are also working, this is a part also of my PhD in terms of indie or independent innovation, when we encourage young students to be super proactive in order to configure their innovation processes or activities. We start since the beginning when we open, when we launched the makerspace, immediately to stay in connection with the regional governments. So we don't have 6 years ago a strong reputation in Europe, but there was a good reputation in our regional context. And then we start from this in order to experiment pragmatically what is the role of a makerspace in order to create local innovation ecosystem. And so we start immediately to design connection with other universities, but also with regional governments in order to set up pilot action, that start to combine design and digital fabrication in order to implement projects that can stimulate small, medium enterprises to understand what is the potential of combining design and digital fabrication in the idea of local manufacturing. So this is like an example I can show. This is a next design innovation project where we implemented 15 project creating a collaboration between 50 designers that come from Regione Lombardia in various we invite all the designers, we select the idea, we put all together in the Fab Lab, and then we create an innovation ecosystem where the designer can peer-to-peer learn and implement their project. And starting from this experience, progressively we go to create other pilot project that change the region, change the challenge, but start to create locally or recreate locally in idea of distributed innovation approach. What we do. This is another project that's called Fabrication that explore the potential of a poor material like hemp that has been rediscovered involving a local museum and a local producer of hemp with designer and Fablabs in order to create a new object that start to broke the traditional mindset in using this material to implement innovative solutions that start to explore the use of hemp like a biomaterial or composite material and so on. Then at the same time, we scale up event related to the pilot project in order to stay in touch with the society, in order to storytell this kind of project. In parallel, we participate to municipal events related to the idea of new craft and cultural event when we start to organize an idea of new craft, when we involve, for example, on topics like urban mobility, a new idea of making bikes that is open source, involving craftsmen, companies, association of bike angels, the people that has passion in this kind of sector, in order to provocative co-design a model of bike, of urban bike that can fit perfectly with the city of Milan and its needs. And so we crowd design and crowd make and collaborating in order to design this bike and ensure this bike. At the same time, we've progressively involved with the municipality of Milan, participating also to program that start to use the Fab Lab, because in Milan there is 10 Fab Labs, there is a strong ecosystem, in order to stimulate the need, the not employed young people to participate, to be involved in the Fab Lab, in order to acquire a sort of passion in making and start to regenerate their skill, in order to upgrade their skill through making and creating community. This first kind of this is another event that is part when we collaborate every year, is a policy launched by Milan. It is the idea of implementing a urban manufacturing system that combine old manufacturer craftsmen with the new manufacturing center related to Industry 4.0, the Fab Lab ecosystem in Milan. And so we are part of this system. If you try to align all these four projects, we can understand that it's relevant for us day by day, year by year, to increase this relationship with the city. And this has been the opportunity for us in order to scale up our capability and our challenges in implementing design for making and social innovation at another scale. In this way, we have been 3 years ago the parts of distributed design market platform. That is a Creative Europe project that aims to create the opportunity for maker, designer, and independent innovator to implement their creation in close connection with the European system of Fab Labs that can materialize their idea. And we use a particular focus in the last 3 years because we select healthcare or the idea of extended care for basing our pilot initiative. So in the last 3 years, and this is the distributed design platform when you can find a lot of information on the project that European Fab Lab are doing in this perspective. And we focus our idea in the first, the second, and the third year to collaborate with the patient association in order to design open source solution that can be related to various problems. See, this is the FabCare, the first year when we explore the prototyping of small objects, small devices, digital analog or analog object materialized through digital fabrication that can support people in monitoring and self-monitoring of some kind of disease. This second initiative in the second year put this challenge a little bit more because it's called Next Steps. And these initiatives start to collaborate with another patient association characterized by to support people with having a super rare disease that is glycogenesis. And when there is a progression in the loss of capability to walk and move. And so we co-design with them and prototype this kind of aids that are common aids that are redesigned, starting from the idea that you can stay in close connection with the patient and their needs, and then you can define a co-design paths. And this year, for example, has been, there was a COVID situation, and we start to take this perspective in order to explore in close connection with 50 students that was locked down in their home. What is the idea of design everyday lives, stay in home, stay locked down at home, and collaborating with other students in order to implement solution for the imagining what is the design everyday life in the COVID or in post-COVID era. And there was the creation of small objects that start to represent what you need if you need to live in a city when you have to close in 15 minutes, when you are locked down, when you go to exit alone, or if you have to dress your mask every day, you know. This discourse, it's also make another progression when we jump in order to be involved in the H2020 project. And also when we deal with the patient and user innovation in the field of healthcare. When we go to present, when we go to explain, when we go to show what was the previous project during the Maker Fair, we stay in touch with a big pharma company. It was Sanofi Genzyme. And so they was very active in organizing events in order to discover independent innovator in the field of healthcare. So we start to create a connection and a collaboration that lead to creation Make to Care. Make to Care has been a research, it's a 3-year research that we are developing in close connection and close collaboration with Sanofi Genzyme in order to explore the ecosystem of independent innovators and patient innovators that are implementing for now at national level in Italy, projects that are characterized having a precise scope, fighting disability or remove or to support to fight impairment, physical impairment of people affected by rare disease. And in 3 years, we mapped more than 150 projects implemented by 200 subjects. And when we go to them, and then we start to understand and how they are working, what is the purpose, what are the association that they are connecting or collaborating, and mapping progressively this data. We elaborate some report that show what is the Make to Care ecosystem and how the patient innovator can scale up starting from zero, taking into consideration all the regulatory system and the things, what is the evolution of these innovation paths. And now at the end of this, in this year, we will launch this experience. We are systematizing all this knowledge in a platform that will be released and will be Design Healthcare Innovation, when there will be a map, an interactive map that will show what are the independent innovators and the patient innovators. And so the platform will be open to the independent and patient innovator in order to connect and then propose their innovation that will be mapped in the platform in order to augmenting the opportunity to share this kind of practices and scale up this kind of practices and become more and more relevant to understand what are the dynamics in terms of implementing user and patient innovation. Then we move this kind of experience in parallel because we participate to another project that is called Syscode that start to use the co-design approach in terms of create more and a lot of awareness in the policy making in order to be relevant to act in society. This project is characterized by the involvement of living labs, Fablabs, and other kind of labs that are in museum that implement pilot project when they put a citizen in connection with scientists and policymakers in order to implement pilots that start to give methodologies to the policymaker in order to understand what are the dynamics of innovation, in order to be more reactive when they go to define innovation policy. We deal with the healthcare, and then our pilot is called Body Sound. And then we organize a pilot collaborating with the Fight the Stroke. There is a patient association that is working in the field of neonatal and prenatal stroke. And these these children have a physical impairment. And when we are using music, ICT application in order to create a new kind of exercise when they start to learn to rebalance their physical capabilities. And so now we are implementing with these children, and we are completing in April will be completed the pilot, and we will able to collaborate on another level with the patient association on these things. Another research that we are showing, it's relevant for us because we are coming back to work in the city of Milan, and it's called Reflow. And Reflow is a project that deals with urban circular innovation with a strong involvement of citizens and the business and governments in order to design and co-create circular and regenerative resources flows in the city. There are 6 pilots in city involved in Milan, Amsterdam, Berlin, Paris, and Cluj and Vejle in Denmark. And so we are working together in order to implement different pilot projects that show how it is possible to co-create a circular business model. In particular, the municipality of Milan, and when we collaborate within the pilot and other 2 Fablabs, is working on the topic of food. So Milan, we have 22 covered municipal market that are subject with a new policy that start to innovate this kind of markets in order to become more secure and connected with the urban and peri-urban food system. And because Milan is quite famous, because after Expo 2015, we have a food policy that we share with organization and citizen and other city. And for this reason, we are working in close connection with the general market and the local market in order to implementing and prototyping solutions that start to use the blockchain and open source system in order to create the tracking that involves citizen and market and neighbor in order to create a new kind of metabolism. And the final project that we participate has been launched in June 2020, and it's called Tfactor and deal with the urban transformation. In particular, the idea of involving urban hubs and in particular the meanwhile spaces that have to be regenerated. When we are in the city, we have the big developer that work with the urban plan and with invasive and massive works on the cities. And then is the idea that in the temporary or the transformative time, when the implementation of a building that are a strategic role in the city is used by the citizen to implement entrepreneurial activity or activity that can have a scope for the neighbor or for the districts. And so we are starting to implement now a sort of transformation agency that can provide services for the local cities, for the cities and for the citizens, in order to design initiative that can use the transformative time for the citizen. And this is the last stream of activity that we do in Polyfactory, that will live more with the people, with the young talents, and in the cultivation of the biodiversity of talents that deal with digital technology, but also having an indie innovation mindset. And so every year, more or less, we have 40, 50 students that come in Polyfactory for the pre-incubation of ideas. And then we host in residencies. Now, during the COVID period, this is a super interesting challenge, because we are working to virtualize our lab in order to virtualize the talent in residence feature. And we encourage them to be in terms of experimental learning and peer-to-peer learning. So we follow them in the implementation of their thesis, but we encourage them to use the space in a collaborative way in order to implement their project. And then we connect them with external incubator in or other kind of initiative that can support them to have independent implementation or future implementation of their work. So we are working in close connection, for example, with the local with the Polytechnical incubator or open incubator. And we also encourage the biodiversity of the thesis that explore the use of design and digital technology in different directions, from agri-food system to healthcare, and in order to give more opportunity to colonize a new frontier or new territory for design and digital innovation, and having this talent in resident program. In summarizing my presentation, when we go to reason and reflect about the value of hacking and making for social innovation, I think that also considering the COVID time, the new COVID era that is coming, in my opinion, hacking has three big values. It's able to open a system when a system is closed or a system is closed. Yes, it's able, or it's a sort of approach. It's a practical approach. It's a mindset approach. It's a cultural approach that can help social innovation to be more open. In order to use this kind of practices, using the technology to open and systematize and analyze this kind of practices and put the information or data related to this in order to open this kind of practices and distribute the practices. The second is provoking, is altering social innovation, use the basis of social innovation, but also using hacking in a sort of critical and speculative design perspective in order to force in some positive or negative aspects of social innovation paths in terms of use of technology, or too positive vision or too ingenuous vision that sometimes characterize some social innovation initiative in order to criticize the society or self-criticize the capability of social innovation to be really effective when there is the practice. Then is the idea to use hacking and the hacker approach to augmenting, expanding the capability of social innovation. For example, in providing services that involve citizen, or they can create a more inclusive opportunity for citizen in the society. And because, for example, a lot of initiatives in social innovation have some economic problems or are part of asymmetric competition with other kind of services provided by large-scale multinational or so on. In this way, or because this kind of subject has strong investment in use of technology that can influence a lot the shape of services, sometimes also dehumanizing or inhumanizing this kind of services. And for this reason, in my opinion, digital fabrication design, making hacking approach can a little bit work on this aspect in order to augment these social innovation practices. And so I think that I hope to be stay in time, perfect, more or less. For me, I be a little bit longer, but this is enough. And I thank you again, iNOVA, for this opportunity.
No, we do actually thank you, Massimo. So it's really striking already the diversity and in your case, the range of projects that Polyfactory is involved in. So I would like to pass now the word to Eric Gordon. Maximo, I will just ask you kindly to
Yes.
yes, thank you. And I will introduce now Eric Gordon from MIT and Engagement Lab. Actually, Eric is the founder of Engagement Lab. So Eric, thank you once more for being available for this webinar, and the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to try to be very, very quick if I can. I just want to just introduce a few concepts. You know, my understanding of you know, the conversation that we're hoping to have today is about how these labs function, and so I will talk a little bit about my lab just for a minute or two, but then I just really want to talk about the future of these labs within university and some of the, I think, some of the challenges. And I can speak specifically from the US context and how these labs get funded. I assume it's, you know, I know that there are different funding models in Europe, and it would be interesting to have a conversation about that as well. Let me go ahead and share my screen briefly. There we go. Okay, so again, I'm a visiting professor at MIT in the Comparative Media Studies department there, and working with some of the labs that exist there, and my full-time appointment is at Emerson, where I'm the founder of the Engagement Lab, and I'm just going to say a few words about that. It was founded in 2010. It's been around for a really long time, and I founded it basically by cobbling together a couple of funded projects. There was no internal university funding for this, and it was absolutely a fake it till you make it sort of thing, where I made a website, called it a thing, and then eventually it became a thing as I was able to you know, hire more people and get a space and build programs and all of that. But certainly that's how it began, because I felt like there was a need for sort of cultivating kind of creating an envelope around a research agenda. The other thing I'll say is that it began as my research agenda, and it has since moved into a multiple PI laboratory, which was also a pretty significant set of growing pains to go through, where it removes the sort of founding the founding director problem, right? Where I had to sort of move away from my personal agenda into and broaden it out into a larger agenda. So let me just say a few words about what it is that we do. And you know, the primary question that my lab focuses on is how can publics effectively interface with civic institutions in an age of increasing mistrust? So I'm particularly interested in modes of collaborative design and participatory design and what I call civic design, which I'll explain in a second. So civic design or public-centered design is really the orientation of the design process around the communities with whom we're designing. The challenge, and now I live in Boston and work in Boston, and much of the work I do is located in Boston, not all of it for sure. But Boston is an interesting case study as a city because there are quite a few universities here. And that means that, you know, in this city, if you're poor and you're of color, you're overstudied, you're over-partnered with, you're over-engaged by municipalities, by universities. And there's an incredible amount of distrust and mistrust in the university actor, because there's a long history of extractive design and extractive research, where researchers, sometimes well-intentioned, sometimes not, go into communities, extract data, extract their participation in something, work within the sort of publication cycle that faculty care about, or the semester cycle that students care about, and then when it's over, they're gone. And so over time, that has generated a pretty significant context of mistrust in the city, and the same is true for other American cities But Boston in particular, because of the amount of elite universities in one city, it poses significant trouble. So the approach that we take in our lab is again associated with civic design, which I define as corresponding to engaging with publics, and I'll explain a bit about that. Play is a central component to this, which is creating the spaces for play or spaces for freedom or discovery. And ultimately the goal of design, as I understand it, is always care. And what that means is that ultimately the thing that is designed, the product, the object, needs to be cared about, certainly by the user or the stakeholder. But ultimately, if the process is done well, then there's a reciprocity, there's a caring for, there's a mutuality that emerges, and then ultimately there's a context of trust that can develop, and that's really the goal of all of our work. I'm just going to really go through. I don't want to even spend any time on this. I will just pause for a moment on care, inspired by the political scientist Joan Tronto, who talks about care in her work, Caring Democracy. She says, democratic politics should center upon assigning responsibilities for care and for assuring that democratic citizens are as capable as possible of participating in this assignment of responsibilities. And ultimately, as a way of, as a goal of design, to think about the assigning responsibilities for care. This has become increasingly clear in a context of both COVID and racial reckoning in the United States. The idea that care is something that cannot be pawned off to others, and that there's a mutual responsibility for that to exist. This is all. I'm just going to sort of like throw a plug for my book, because I won't have time to go into detail, but my recent book called Meaningful Inefficiencies, Civic Design in an Age of Digital Expediency, goes through all this and sort of maps out our approach to civic design. And I'll just say very briefly, this notion of meaningful inefficiencies is this is where play comes in, is the idea that we actually want to create opportunities that are intentionally inefficient, so that we're not sort of moving people along a line, to the goal in the fastest possible way, but we're in fact creating a context for meaning making, for discovery, for deliberation and trust and care ultimately. Again, I don't want to spend much time because I really do want to get to questions and conversations with this extraordinary group. I'll say that I have worked our lab does some work in VR. We recently did a project with a prison in Massachusetts, which is the state that I live in where Boston is, where we worked with women in prison to co-design VR episodes or 360 video episodes, and what they were about re-entry. So women prior to leaving prison co-created these narrative episodes that would then be used by women in prison prior to them leaving. So we created these videos that look something like this. I'm just gonna skip ahead here to, I don't know, can you hear that?
Yeah, we can see.
You can see, but you can't hear. Anyway, what you're seeing here is someone going through a job interview process, and you hear the narrative, someone narrativizing what's going on. The idea here being that the experience of looking for a job when first leaving prison is incredibly anxiety provoking, and we wanted to create that and create opportunities for discussion amongst people. And now this is being used by mental health within the prison to work with women who are going through this process. And we actually got it approved to bring the VR goggles into the prison, which was a pretty remarkable bureaucratic feat, actually. And then a lot of the other work I'm doing right now is in the space of smart cities. And I'm gonna again blow through this, but I just want to say that the work that we focus on is about, again, how do we create context for you know, for technologies to be experimented with within cities, but have it be community led, so that it's not so that we're not installing technologies to experiment on communities, but we're actually allowing communities to define the questions and actually define the kinds of technologies that get placed within cities. And this is what we've worked on with a pilot project called Beta Blocks, where we created block level experimentation zones that encourage you know, groups of people to invent, adopt, and adapt technologies within their neighborhoods. And then that became, we had a series of them throughout the city, and that became a mechanism for the city to actually meaningfully engage in a citizen-led process. It was not a city-led process, and that was particularly valuable. Again, I'm going to just plow through this so we can move on. But we created games as a way of interacting with people to get them thinking creatively about technology that we brought to public spaces. We brought this into community meetings, and you know, ultimately created spaces. But again, these pop-up innovation spaces where people could think about the kinds of technologies that they want to see within their communities, and then we partnered with tech companies to actually install those technologies. And interestingly, for those curious about the sort of bureaucratic side of this, it was we actually we were able to work with the city to temporarily relax permitting requirements so that we were able to install technologies for a period of 60 days and then remove them. So normally in the city of Boston, you would have to go through a pretty arduous permitting process in order to get anything put on the sidewalk, but we were able to get past that, which is a pretty significant you know, kind of policy hack. Okay. Again, I'm sorry I'm rushing through, but I do want to get to one last thing, which is where the work has moved in the last couple months, which is what we're calling the Boston Collaborative Governance Initiative. And this is actually an attempt to create an urban living laboratory, one that is not located within the municipality, which is typically how they're situated. But this one is located in outside within a network where university, governments, the private sector, and civil society effectively collaborate, but importantly, the university and the municipality do not set the agenda. So all too often, it's government and university researchers who are setting the agenda, setting the research agenda, setting the design agenda. And in this case, we're trying to create the governance mechanisms so that the agenda is set by community, where power is deferred to community, so that and university and government are at the table, but their place at the table is very well defined. Again, as we deal with a pretty significant fracturing of trust, you know, within our relationship to institutions in general, but certainly our relationship to government, that building mechanisms of governance that are thoughtful and innovative, where university is a partner, is the focus of a lot of my work right now, and the focus of my of the, you know, future directions of my lab. And so I'll just leave with this, which is that I think that universities have a lot to offer in innovation within, you know, within cities. I do think that universities need to check their power. They need to understand that even though they're bringing, you know, really smart people and fancy technologies, that they're not always helpful, and that we have to collaboratively design contexts where we get to step back. And we get to let other people lead for a little while, and so we can celebrate our own accomplishments and continue to work through our own sort of processes of tenure and promotion. But we have to do that not at the expense of the people that we claim to work with. And with that, I'll end. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Not only by your great presentation, I think you already shared several seeds for reflection, starting, of course, with the challenges of university themselves, and of course putting university by the mirror, but also on my side, also on the time management that we are running in guests. So with no further delay, I will pass the word to Luisa Santos, who is at Fundação Getúlio Vargas in Brazil, and she's right on the process of implementing a new lab. So Luisa, thank you once more, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, I believe, for most of the people. I will share my screen. Just some. Okay, is everyone seeing? Yeah, okay. Okay. So first of all, I'm Luisa. I'm a PhD in Communication and Information Studies. I'm actually the baby in the crowd here because I finished my PhD just last year, which is also when I began to work in this project that I will present today. That is just in the early stages, but it's really great to be here. So thank you to Paulo and to iNOVA Media Lab for this invitation and for organizing this event, and also to the colleagues for the opportunity to hear about their experience. So it's a pleasure for me to be here, and I will share a little bit of what we are thinking at Fundação Getúlio Vargas, and also learn from you today. I'm here to talk about the so far very short story of our innovation lab. Compared to the other labs that are here today, we are still like a baby lab, just a few months old. We have begun to work on this project around September last year. And we are so in the early stages that we also ended up changing names. When we were invited to speak here, we were called Innovation Cube, which was like our first trial of a name. And now we have changed it to Games and Digital Lab, which we believe can give a more accurate idea of our aspirations. So I believe that is also part of the initial process of understanding what this lab can be. So the new Digital and Games and Digital Lab is part of the Public Policy Analysis Directorate. That is a research center at Fundação Getúlio Vargas in Brazil. Fundação Getúlio Vargas is a higher education institution located in Rio de Janeiro. Since our research center is now consolidated as a reference in social media investigation and social network analysis, we are moving on to new challenges in the digital context. And one of these challenges is a new school of communication, media, and information that's aimed to be running maybe by next year. And also a second project is this, of course, Games and Digital Lab that is aimed to integrate professors and students of the school in innovative research. Okay. So our laboratory is focused on empirical, experimental, and critical research with digital technologies, concentrating on their social and communicational aspects. We have a transdisciplinary perspective, combining research team in areas such as media and communication studies, economics, computer science, sociology, and design. And as we develop, we also aim to include other disciplines such as engineering and anthropology, for instance. As a team, we are interested in understanding the effects, experiences, and potential for social applications of emerging technologies, especially concerning young adult public in the specific context of Brazil. Our goal is to become a reference in Brazil in the investigation and experimentation of digital technologies focused on immersive and interactive experiences. Through the knowledge of our research team and facilities, we act as a center that tries to promote creativity and provide support for the experimentation of the future students and researchers at our institution. That is actually a particular challenging project, I believe, because we have started working on this just last year, and we have not worked together in a room because of the COVID crisis. So we have only worked in remote. So that has been a big challenge for our team, but I believe it's also maybe an opportunity, and try to think of this lab as really born virtual, and we can see how we go from there. So our main purpose as a lab is to establish a direct dialogue between the students and the professors, technology companies also, and research centers inside and outside of Brazil, and also, of course, and most importantly, the society. It is very important for Game and Digital Lab that all of our developments happen in close relations to specific social issues and problems detected in Brazil communities. We want to be able to experiment with digital technology to create a place where we can explore media possibilities. So as far as research areas that we are interested in, currently we have like 3 main investigation focal points. That is digital games, mixed, augmented, and virtual reality, and also artificial intelligence. These technologies, we believe, that create new ways to perceive and to interact with digital devices, with the potential to alter social practice, as well as to allow for experimentation with new media and content formats. Our main research goals so far are, first, to understand and analyze the aspects of sociability and interaction in digital games, and secondary platform as well. And also aspects related to Brazilian gamer culture. That's actually like the main topic that we are going through, because in Brazil, we have a very strong gaming culture, and also most of gamers really enjoy playing in online games, and also sociability is a very special and particular thing, so that's important to us. The second is to investigate and to experiment on immersive experience in mixed virtual and augmented reality, focusing especially on production of new media contents and on the idea of shifting perspective and being able to experience situations as another and the effects of this experience. And third is to investigate and experiment on technologies based on artificial intelligence, proposing new social uses for them, and also, very important, critical observation of their uses in Brazilian social context. The purpose is not only to investigate the topics listed, but also to conduct practical research capable of proposing immersive interventions, media contents, and proposals for technology uses aligned with social issues. Games in Digital Lab understands digital technology as potential spheres for social transformation capable of intervening in reality. But of course, as we are only a few months old, it is important that our research first understand the ways that these technologies are used and their effects and potential in Brazilian contexts. After building upon this knowledge, we understand that we can explore ways of using technology to solve issues and to be repurposed by users, and also to create critical awareness. The topic of thinking technology as something that can be repurposed or used in a different way is actually very important also in Brazilian context, because we have here like a way of doing things that we call by a specific term that is called gambiarra. Gambiarra is anything that you do with an object to try to use it in another way, or to try to use it even if you don't have like the perfect condition or access. So is the way that the user changes something in order to be more close to its reality. So that's important to us because it's very cultural, and also it says a lot about how Brazilians can use technology, and we aim to do that in also this space. As a first research experiment for our team that has begun just around December, and one that we can undergo through remote work, since Brazil is like in a permanent state of COVID crisis. We are analyzing the use of games as a place for debating politics, following the American lead in our municipal elections in 2020. Brazilian politicians used games such as Among Us to dialogue with gamer public and to campaign, of course. After an extensive social network data collection, we are now trying to understand how did Brazilian gamer culture engage with these initiatives, which we believe can help us think further ahead on participative and democratic initiatives for this specific public that is usually younger. Sorry. Our main goal is to consolidate Games in Digital Lab as a reference center in the experimentation and investigation of immersive digital technologies and artificial intelligence in the Brazilian context. And in order to do that, we are cooking up some actions that can bring together the interests and knowledge of students and professors alongside with technology, industry, and society at large. So some of the actions that we are preparing are, for example, first, building up extensive collection, having equipment and structure, so that students and researchers can experiment with this technology, but also that we can create over time a space for technological memory, which is not very common in Brazil. I do know that in Europe that's different, but here we don't have much of this memory of devices. So we would like over time to do that. We also want to engage with the society, having an open lab day. That is a day that people can come to the lab, can get to know the researches that we are doing, and also can experiment with whichever technology we have there. And hopefully from this encounter, we can also have some feedback and some ideas of what is interesting to people in these researchers or in these technologies. Of course, creating research networks and workshops to spread our knowledge, and also making hackathons to have a cooperative creation, both regular hackathons, but also social hackathons that try to find solutions to social problems. And also we are planning to have like a pre-developer that is aimed to foster new ideas of researchers and students of the school, and then provide the adequate environment for them to be fostered and maybe then go into the market. In the current development stage of Games in Digital Lab, we understand that our project is just beginning and that both our research results and the community interest should be responsible for shaping most of our future. Due to particularities in Brazilian higher education system, we still do not have many initiatives that propose to understand and to innovate through media. Also, it's very important to us that we can have a partnership with private sectors to finance also research, since, of course, Brazilian scenario of funding for researchers is not ideal at the moment. In the academic field in Brazil tends to focus more in communication process and less in media itself. So we understand that understanding media effects and repurposing technology in order to explore their positive possibilities in Brazilian society is in itself an innovative initiative here. Our primary concern is to create a creative space that can pose social questions and find proposals to be an actor of change. And of course, that is really small changes. We want to be able to do that alongside the technology sector in a cooperative way, but respecting, of course, which I believe it's difficult, the diligence that academic research demands. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Luisa, for your contribution. And we are aware that you're launching the first steps to the implementation of the lab. So with no further delay, we'll entering the stage and the time for question and answers. Of course, that's the great value on this. We have already some registered through the question and answer tab here. So please, if you have any questions to put to any of our or all our panelists this afternoon, please do it using the question and answer, the Q&A tab. So there's actually one initial question shared by Larissa Gasparo, and I will ask each of our panelists to try to answer. I would suggest in a minute or so. So it's, of course, Eric already mentioned this. It's regarding the sustainability, in particular the funding and the financial sustainability of innovation labs in the particular setting of university or higher education institutions. So if you the four can and eventually Luisa, she's now involving in the building the initial blocks for this. If you would like to ask you one of all of you on the financial and sustainability of your own labs. Larissa also asks if there are kind of what are the minimum conditions for creating a lab. So I will ask 1-2 minutes for each one of you, and I will start again with Lily, if you will.
Thank you. Initially, Media Lab, when it was founded, it was an experiment by the Ministry of Education in Finland. And after the first 5 years, the experiment seemed to be like successful. And then we were incorporated as a department to the university. That was the University of Art and Design Helsinki. One of the tricky things is, regarding the financing is that there, at least, the situation is that we do have, some funding from the university for most of the infrastructure, but it's never enough, considering how we want to be carrying a very active research agenda, and then also to offer the kind of education that that we have been offering to our students. Although we have a transdisciplinary group of people that come to work with us from the sciences, but we're also targeted to arts, and there's this like craft orientation as well. So typically our courses tend to be like few students and so on. So what I can say regarding that part of the finances is that it has always been a struggle for the Media Lab in Finland, in Aalto University, insofar as, we're always having to, all the people that work there, the faculty is always, on, writing proposals for funding. Yeah.
Massimo, thanks, Lily. Massimo, want to add your experience regarding Polyfactory?
Yes. We start 6 years ago receiving an initial fund directly by the rector. He takes his personal funds and said, okay, guys, it's up to you now. And after this, this first steps for us has been, we start to work in the Polyfactory. There was 3 people, and then and the first approach, it was wrong, because we start to think as a normal Fab Lab, okay, we can do services, we can do this. Totally wrong. It cannot work. So we start to refocus immediately within the first year in order to immediately use the digital fabrication and what we are learning. I attend the Fab Academy, and so they explain the model that can be used. But if you are an external Fab Lab, if you want to be a research Fab Lab, you have to totally change your approach. And then for this reason, we start to say, okay, what we can do, and we start to define a sort of strategy. You can imagine a table with 4 legs, and the legs is, okay, we want to go to talk with the producer in order to create a wall of donor, and we would involve companies to help us to provide technology, to give us something we can experiment with them. A second was immediately to create, to participate, to bid local, national, European, and you have to create your independence in terms of economic. So fortunately, because there is also a combination of luck in life, it's not everything, okay, you can push a lot, but you can participate to 200 bids, but if you are not able to win a couple, it's quite difficult. And I'm talking about European funds, especially because for the European university, and I think is a common topic for all of us, no? And how to and so after this reason, starting for the first project, we approached the Creative Europe. It has been a good gym for us to teach, to learn how to create a stronger connection with other institutions. And then step by step, we increase the capability to participate to European networks and be part of proposal, and then establish a sort of baseline in terms of sustainability of the lab. Today, we are totally sustainable. We have 12 collaborators, and then it's the fighting every day, because you have to invent and reinvent yourself. Moving from the participation to the bids, to the European funding and so on, we use this in order to create new research lines that are totally self-committed, because this is a lab to anticipate new research line that we want to do in order to be ready for the next 2 years. So we are stimulating the collaborator with us in order to implement original research line that can be in a couple of years incubated within the lab in order to be experimental and so on. And the final is to work on young talents. We invest a lot of effort and commitment, not money, but commitment and effort to work with the young people, with the young innovators. And then we collaborate with them. We are supported also by the Technology Transfer Office of Politecnico, and so we are encouraging them, and we become sometimes co-author of the implementation of the innovation. And in this way, it's another way to create spin-off and startup that are connected with us. It's a strategy to diversify the activity in order to feed all the activity are connected and can create a sort of strategy that give us the possibility to be sustainable. For now, it's working in a good way. We hope for the future also.
Eric, thank you, Massimo. Eric, do you want to elaborate also on this? And we have actually a couple of questions to share, but I would like to hear from you also on this, because I'm assuming that the US context may be quite different from the European one.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I'll talk about. I mean, as I mentioned, my experience was getting grants from private foundations. So a lot of the government funding is not very available in the United States. I mean, we have certain funding agencies, and it's great when you get them, but they're incredibly competitive, and you can't rely on it essentially. And so the private foundation world is useful here. Now the challenge that I've found in trying to maintain a lab is that once you begin to grow dependent on philanthropy, it's hard to break away, right? So I think what Massimo was saying about you've created a kind of business model for your lab that seems sustainable and very inspiring, actually. But that's very hard to do, to bring in other revenue sources. And the other thing that we're struggling with is where the money's coming from. And so if we take money from from government, if we take money from corporations, which I certainly have taken money from both of those places, but I think it's questionable when we ask people to participate in things and trying to be transparent about where the money's coming from. I think that's something that I struggle with all the time, to make sure that we have a kind of a sustainable flow of money, but we're also honest about where the money is flowing from. And so I find that it's, you know, the challenge of getting, you know, building that sustainability. I mean, again, I've been doing it for 10 years and it's still not easy. The other thing that I'll bring up, and I don't know if this is different in the European context that we're discussing here, but the indirect that is taken from, you know, American universities is very high. So for example, you know, at MIT, I think it's 57% of any grant that you bring in just goes to the university. And so, you know, that's fine if you're dealing with federal money and the numbers are large. But if you're working with a private foundation or you know, a small organization, and you have maybe $50,000 to work with, and more than half of it goes away, and, you know, it's very hard. So, you know, so I think that and this is why I puzzle all the time about, well, what's the role of universities? If it's so expensive to mobilize the university, wouldn't that money be better used somewhere else? You know, like, I think we need to ask ourselves that question quite honestly. And I'd be curious to know if it's different in other national contexts.
Perfect. So in Portugal, just to add on that, so we are not yet on the 57% of MIT, but there's actually each university has already I would say from 20 to 25% that for every, that's the main percent that it caps for. Of course, it is always possible, as you know, to try to negotiate the application of those 20 to 25%. That's always more work to that. So actually, Eric, there's one question that I will ask you to answer, and then of course share it to the other panelists on this regarding the involvement. So it's a question by Assunção Duarte, which is actually a PhD student in digital media, regarding your involvement or the engagement lab involvement with the local community. And because we are now in the middle of a pandemic, if that can stay for long. So what are the lab, but I'll of course later extend to your 4 labs. What are your plans, strategies, and kind of tips to continue involving and developing this engaged work with communities during these pandemics?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'll just quickly share one experience here. So last semester, I taught a class called the Codesign Studio. Normally, with the code, so it's a class on collaborative design methods, and we would bring in a partner or two usually, and then work with that partner to design something. In this case, because of COVID, so this was we did the class was entirely online. I taught the class. I taught the class in collaboration with the University of Washington, which is in Seattle, across the country. And we worked with 11 different community partners who not only dropped into the class, but actually took the class with the students. That never would have happened if not for COVID. And so the things that never would have happened, I never would have thought to teach a class with another university across the country. I never would have thought to ask people to, so the community partners are all located in the Boston area. They would not have gotten to Cambridge, where MIT is, every single, twice a week to join this class. It never would have happened, but they could jump onto Zoom and participate in this thing. And so what it did to me, it actually, while some things are more difficult, it's actually opened up possibilities for collaborating with people. It takes less of their time. There's like different modes that can be, that are less threatening, or, it's hard for some people to go onto a university campus. They don't feel like that they belong there, but they can pop onto a Zoom meeting and you can make that a welcoming space easier. And so again, like, it hasn't been easy. I'm not saying it is, but I have found that there are some encouraging possibilities that I would like to continue even once we return to physicality. You know, I think that there are some things that I've learned about how to more effectively connect with community and collaborative design processes.
Thank you so much, Luisa. So you were just mentioning a couple of minutes ago that Brazil is in a, I think using your own words, in a state of permanent um, uh, severe situation with COVID. So how is this COVID-19 situation in kind of determining the evolution of the project that you are actually in this on stage implementing?
Yeah, so that has been a real challenge because I have entered the team to lead this initiative, but I wasn't working in the institution before. So I have joined by middle September, and around October began to work in this project. And I have only met everyone online, so have never seen any of my colleagues in person ever. So that's a little bit of a challenge. But well, in also, I believe that this put us maybe a little behind in getting our physical space running, like having actual we have an actual space, but we don't have the technologies yet, and even if we did, we could not go to university, so that's an issue. But also I believe that in the same sense that Eric was talking, since all the researchers also have like many other agendas, not just the lab, so we can like find small parts of time to work on this, and like have more maybe we are talking more if we were like going to physical university, because we are always working online. So if we see something we can share, and that makes, I believe, the idea advance. So I believe like for this first stage that we are trying to see what we are going to be, and what are the expectations, and also like try to make fundings, not you know, that's important. I believe it hasn't like been something that was really put us behind or something, because it's okay too. And also we have like tried to experiment with meeting in different spaces. So since we are trying to understand games and so on, sometimes we do shared meeting to play something and also talk about research, or to explore a virtual world together. And that also, I believe, it's interesting, and maybe we would not do these early stages if it was not in this context. And also I may believe that for the funding part that we are trying to do, it's not easy in Brazil to have governmental funding. We have some local agencies that's from the states that have sometimes good potential, but always very competitive as well. So for us, it's important to try to establish contact with people working in the industries, and maybe have funding from there besides from the university itself. And for this, I also believe that maybe it's easier to get people to meet with us and to talk to them, because it's not as compromising, and it's just a little bit of their time. And so I don't know, maybe for this it hasn't been so bad, but of course it's not the same to try to find what we have in common as a team. We are 6 researchers. If we are not together, you know, so I believe that's difficult, but I don't know if I answered you.
Yeah. So Massimo, I'll be, thank you, Luisa. I'll be picking on something that Eric was commenting. So I'm putting this question to Massimo and to Lily, if you will. So regarding the lessons learned, so these difficulties, because we are all connected with infrastructure and of course our presence and experimental activities. So I would ask you for the last year, of course, we are almost reaching 1 year of having to find solutions and alternative ways of working. So even when all this passes, what type of lessons would you like to keep in place?
The first lesson that I learned in the last year, so it has been so the COVID represent for us a sort of real problem, because you can imagine a lab when every day. So I have this picture that is in my mind like a sort of small Hiroshima for my lab. I remember the 21 of February, there was more than 200 people that was making the PhD festival in my lab. I was so proud, and I received the news that there was the COVID and they block immediately the Lombardy region. It was a first of, is the last picture that I have of my lab full of 200 people. I have freezed in my mind this image. And so never will be the same. And so after, it was 3 months that I remember that I spent together with Stefan is my colleague, to reorganize and refine the idea. So we discover a sort of resilience. And the first lesson that I attend is the solidarity. That was the first exercise that I do. The first thing that I was very lucky, because together with my colleague, it was 1 year before we start to organize, due to the increase of the activity of the lab, the management aspect. We fight with our collaborator to use the Slack and these kind of tools to virtualize some kind of activities. And so we were almost ready to this transformation. But on the other side, we use this time, and also the didactical activity that we make in Polytechnico has been the good side of this of the COVID is in my opinion, the discovery of the concept of hyper localization. So on the certain way, I need to hyper localize the activity that I do. I have to protect my lab. I have to imagine a new normality when the people is safe. And I spend more than 1 hour per day to discuss about rules, behavior, change that are related. And this is, in my opinion, a good exercise of democracy in the lab that I never happened before. And is also mediated by the use of technology. On the other side, I spend hours to talk with the people, and I expand the border of my lab. It's a sort of becoming, so also in the didactical activities, there was a collective learning by doing, by interacting exercise that the humanity made in the last 8 months. That I make things when I was locked down, and the didactical lab and my lab was locked down, that I never imagined before to do it. So this is the lesson that when the pandemic will be hand, probably the hyper local aspect and the level of hyper democracy, so the capability to act very close to your interest, to save your place and around your place when you are doing, also cultivating not only the work but the health and well-being activities related to what you are doing in your lab. Is a good is a prototyping of a life of every day. No, it's not only researching but establishing a good balance. On the other side, augmenting your capability through the use of technology in order to expand the horizon, to extend the horizon of the it's a sort of I think it's the idea of and I completing my reflection now. It's a sort of, my digital twin is expanding my capability when I'm doing, and at the same time, I have time to cultivating my super local interest and regenerating the biodiversity of what I'm doing in my city, in my neighborhood, in my lab. This is what I'm trying to learning and understanding by the practice of every day.
Eric was just commenting here that he couldn't agree more with you. So that hyperlocality is the new scale of globalization. So I would pick on this to ask Lily if you want to share with us all
Yeah, sure. And of course, like, in these presentations, everything that I have talked, it's like I'm providing, it's like one, my view, a filter, a lens of, I think about the situation at Aalto and also in Finland, well, I mean, I will say, like, in solidarity with Massimo, and I think, everybody has, said this, that, the truth of the matter was that we rose up to the challenge, and for us, it started a little bit later. I remember March 13th was the last time we were having, an interview, a series of interviews with colleagues in the chemical arts, in the chemical engineering lab, about a project that we were doing together. And that was the last thing that we did physically together, And then, like, the way they refer to it now is that, well, they had anticipated that at some point the university, would definitely part of it, go very much online kind of thing, because this was like seen as a thing of the future, right? But then we saw ourselves of the future today kind of thing, this like distance education and all of that, and we have people that specialize, on that. But for me, I'm not a specialist in that area, so, and truthfully, I never had been, teaching online. Well, and like Massimo said, learning by doing, for sure. It was like we say in Spanish, sobre la marcha, like as you're going along, you are learning and doing. And we, the way some people, I don't know if this is true, but I have heard references to things like, we expected that it would take us like, 3 to 4 years to turn most of our education into something like this, but we had to do it, in a few months, and we did do it. Now, then, of course, I am very positive about all of this, and, the thing about it is that you can also think about it in like stages, in the sense that, okay, so the first stage, March through May, June, the first, semester. Yes, and we're all like super, like motivated and everything. And then of the things that you see, that you get many more people, than you would normally get. I think, like what Eric is saying, in the classes, it was like, what is this? What's going on? So, we get that. And then summer goes, and you still have things that you're doing, you're engaging, in a very complex, like research project with like 13 partners that we're all distributed. We have never met physically, but, we still, managed to get the work done. The second stage, okay, so we continue, we come up with ways of working collaboratively, and we do it, and it's like, wow, we surprise ourselves. We even had like a mini conference for all the partners in the project that actually Aalto organized, and we had like 4 workshops, basically 16 online workshop sessions for this project, punctuated with like little game strategies, so that everybody would be like pepped up and like enthused throughout the whole thing, right? And then we get to, we are like, yes, we're still going. We get to Christmas, we go through Christmas, and now, where are we now? That's where, I say that, now is the critical stage, because now I think that I detect a little bit of like, tired. Oh, the vaccine is not here. Oh, this, what else are we gonna do? We thought this was gonna be over. No. So, and I think that now is like, the time that, again, as I, said in my beginning, my talk at the beginning, so, we could have all the technology, right? But we also need then the human spirit. I think it's, this is like the marathon, when they say that you're gonna hit the wall, after a certain, that's certain number of miles. I think that that is, at least I am feeling that. And, you know, training, you know, resilience, how to push through, then so that we make it to the, you know, end of this. And mind you, you know, I don't think that this is the last time that we hear about this kind of thing, you know. So to, you know, that have all your antennas, you know, out, because you know, who knows what, you know, is lurking. And is that now, like, you know, what Eric was saying, you know, that now we have the mistrust of, like, you know, this happened, we lived through this, what's next?
Massimo, you're actually raising your hand, so please do.
COVID for me, it's a sort of social stroke. So the humanity take a stroke, and when you come back to the normal day, you think that you are able to do the same thing, but you are not able to do the same thing like a time, and you have to relearn to make the thing. Finding also support in technology, or find also support in other people to come back to make things, in order to come back to the a new normality in a certain way. It's a common word is working, but I think that more in my view, that the metaphor of a social stroke is this: the people seems to be able to do the same things of 5 minutes before things, but it is not. We are losing something, but we have to understand what we has, the new things that are coming in within us, in order to be able to do the things.
One of the things that this stroke has done, though, is to really draw attention to the functioning of the body. And, you know, and again, in the U.S. context, it's impossible to understand COVID without understanding the parallel racial reckoning here in the United States. You know, to the sort of deep awareness of inequality that was all too easy for some people to ignore, and COVID has it brought all that to the surface, right? So we see how a pandemic impacts certain populations, specifically people of color, in a far greater numbers than it does white people in the U.S. And so you can't deny that, right? And so I think whatever we have done, those of relative privilege in operating within universities have done to you know, cope. We have to put now our own coping skills into perspective and understand this from a sort of significant context of inequality, that it would be impossible to go back to what we used to call normal without sort of seeing this new landscape, or this new body that we occupy now after this stroke.
We are reaching the end of our webinar, but I would like once more to, of course, if our participants have still questions to present, I will go for a last round of questions, but also to invite our panelists to final remarks, and particularly if you want to put questions one to the other. So if you want to any particular questions that Eric wants to put to Lily, or Massimo to Luisa, so please go ahead. The floor is yours.
So I am both is for Eric and also Lily, no, because I are sort in my view sort of two sides of a big picture that is coming. No, from the one side is civic engagement, on the other side is the idea to use because Lily is start to figure out a sort of post-humanistic approach, no, in the use of technology. So it's the idea that if you try to bridge the two things, I think that if you put the post-humanist discourse, when the spaces, when they use, whether the new role that play technology in the civic is put in the civic engagement, I think that's something start to figure out a new idea of social innovation. No, there is not, and also go to rediscuss the role of the human agency. And then this, I think that it's a big challenge for for social innovation. No, in a certain ways, is expanded, is augmented, and I think that, for example, for the Fablabs that deal with technology every day, it seems the first input for a radical change.
I also have a question. Can I squeeze in? Because it's in the same direction. It was actually triggered by Lily's talk, so maybe it's to her, but actually it's to everyone. I was thinking, since we all deal with technology and create or try to create through technology, I was wondering which is or which are our responsibility regarding like a conscious use of technology and understanding, of course, that demands resources from earth, from people, from energy, and how can we like put these two things together, because that's something that I wonder sometimes. I do believe that it's an ongoing path, and we cannot just let's not use anything and or something like that. But also we do have a responsibility because we are also creating more. So I don't know, just wondering how can we balance this.
Yeah, and I would in no way want to say that we shouldn't engage with technology. I mean, it is as much it's an intrinsic part of what we are as humans. I mean, that's the thing, that it the same, we create it, but it creates us. So we are engaged in this cycle. But I would say two things. This is super complicated, but super interesting. And this is where I've also been thinking this COVID time. Also, I have thought about that a lot. And for me, it has meant a change from another way of thinking into more relational, what they say, a relational perspective of how everything is interconnected, right? And and I really want to continue with that and explore it. I hope that I mean, and then this, I say, every day we need to be grateful for that. Yeah, so I would say, that, especially with what Eric was presenting, and also Massimo and you, Luisa. And then the other term, responsibility is great, but even more so with capital A, accountability, right? Because it's like, taking the responsibility one step further. That you are accountable if you have been given the opportunity, as we have, because I think all of us here in this group are privileged. We have the opportunity to work, to play, to do all these things. Then we also need to find ways to then give back. And when we get involved in things, think about that notion of like how it's not just being responsible, but that somebody will someday ask. As you have seen with Eric, like, I'm really glad to hear what you're saying about, the whole situation in the United States, because, this is something that, that has been that, it's been there, but, now it's like, I think that many people didn't, and I don't mean in any way to say that, okay, that people there were like, like with, cloth on their eyes or things like that. It isn't as simple. This is why I said the idea that I mentioned something about when you reveal, but you conceal. You reveal this thing to conceal the fact that, behind the technology, there are big political and economic interests.
Eric, I'll pass to you for a final remark if you want, of course.
Yeah, sure. I'll just say something, maybe I mean, first of all, I just want to kind of underline everything that has just been said. I think these are all really important things. And then I'll also say maybe a bit of practical advice or concern, and this is something that I often share with sort of junior scholars or upcoming faculty, is in working in this space sometimes runs counter to the values of the institutions in which we work. So as I mentioned before, you know, the tenure and promotion standards, at least in US universities, are very much focused on traditional metrics such as publications and, you know, primarily publications. And publications, you know, publishing in journals that say 30 people read is not necessarily what social impact or social innovation looks like, and it's not necessarily for the benefit of the people that we're working directly with. So the challenge is that it often requires a sort of doubling up of labor. It requires both the sort of speaking to academics through our traditional modes of academic journals, and also the translation of that work to people that we're working with so that it's directly relevant. And that's a lot of work, you know, and so it's, I'm not holding my breath that universities are going to change quickly, but I do think it is, you know, faculty, especially younger faculty, have to, you know, hopefully kind of band together to begin to change that culture and to start doing this work and advocate for the importance of impact outside of the way that academics typically think about impact, which is, you know, around citations and journals. So that's, I'll stop there.
Well, I wouldn't pick a better thought than yours to reaching the end of the webinar. I would just like to, it was really using the word of Lily, it was a great privilege for us at iNOVA Middle Lab to have your participation on this afternoon. Of course, we will be quite able to keep on talking until the late evening. We are very, very grateful, and thank you in particular to our speakers, Lilias Comonen, Eric Gordon, Luisa Santos, Massimo Bianchini. This opportunity for us all to share and learn from each other's experience in the name, of course, I think it is now apparent by closing this webinar, in the name of a more connected citizenship. And I think that's also, I think by the end of this webinar is also something that these 5 labs have in common. And I'm sure that many of us, not only the 5 of us, but of course the participants in our event today, and I really like to also to give a great thank you for all the participants in our event today. I think we reached in a certain moment more than 70 for just a small webinar. It's really impressive. And any questions, any suggestions, proposals, all of them are very welcome. And of course, also to the participants, once more, thank you to everyone. Once again, many thanks to our speakers today. And I wish you all a safe and healthy year, if you are that, and against all current circumstances, all the ability to be resilient. I think it's also a matter of resistance of all the work that we are doing and you are doing across the lab. So once more, thank you so much for being available and getting the time and the mental energy to share your experience here today, and also to the participants. So see you all very soon. Thank you once more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.